All right, Riverside shows good. Yeah, you'll have to forgive me. Like I said, this is the first time I've used Riverside. Usually I'm using another platform to do it with.
Do they always have things?
No. All right. YouTube looks good. Let me get my TikTok going. Let me check my Facebook real quick. There we go. All right, we're live on everything. All right, first of all, guys, welcome to another episode of Spoken Like a Man. I'm the man Donnie. This one I'm pretty excited about. I've got a couple of guests on here. We're going to be hosting a debate, moderating a debate for them. I've got Corinth and Liberated Woman. I don't know what that issue is. I'm going to close it real quick. I'm going to moderate the debate between these two. Corinth's going to be taking the affirmative, whereas Liberated will be taking the negative. Ground rules. We're going to try to avoid personal attacks. I do want a lively debate. Otherwise, it's just not as fun to watch. And I've watched both of you guys debate, so I know it's going to be good. And by the way, thank you both for being on here. Um, each of you are going to have a 5-minute opening statements where you're going to give your worldview, your definitions, your foundational beliefs. After that, we're going to go over 4 topics. It's going to be, are trans women women? Should trans women enter into women's spaces? Is gender affirming care life-saving medical treatment? Should minors receive gender affirming care? Each one will be taken separately. On each one, you'll get 2 minutes to give your position. Then it'll be 2-minute rebuttals after, 2-minute crosses, and then an open discussion afterwards. Do you guys have any questions about the format?
No.
All right. The only time I'll go ahead, Corinth.
No, I don't. Sorry.
That's all right. The only time I'll be stepping in, really, I want you guys to be able to be cordial about this. The only time I'm going to step in and say anything is if I have to reset because you're talking over each other and we're not getting anything accomplished. All right. So, Corinth, we're going to let you go first for the affirmative, if you don't mind. The first topic is going to be, are trans women women?
Sure. So it's going to be a fairly short answer or opener here. Are trans women? It's going to depend on what we mean when we invoke the term woman. I generally, when I'm talking in like a social sense, I'm meaning someone whose preferences are best met by being identified as the feminine social archetype. If we're meaning something more along the lines of like a hard biology definition of produces large gametes, then or has the primary reproductive pathway to produce large gametes, then no. I don't think words have one sole definition. So my answer is generally sometimes, depends on the context.
Well, and really, that was my fault. I kind of messed that up. I just wanted to give your total worldview and grounding on it. That's my bad. I introduced the topic
Yeah, I
too
was like,
early.
I thought it was.
Yeah, that was my bad, Corinth. You mind just giving your worldview, like on everything in general on this subject, please? My bad.
I'm the progressive. I think trans women are women, generally speaking. I think we should treat them generally as women. There might be like exceptions there, but I think most of the exceptions we're probably going to agree on. I don't really know if there's like how much more I can say about like the primary worldview without it being like we're going to get way too esoteric about it.
That's fine. All right, Liberated, your turn. Give your opening, please. Just kind of your groundings, your definitions, and your foundational beliefs on the topics we'll be discussing.
Alrighty. So woman. What is a woman? The word woman comes from Old English weefman, meaning female human. It was never defined by identities, stereotypes, or roles. For over 1,000 years of English language history, woman has referred to the adult human female. This definition is not recent, not political, and not subjective. It's rooted directly in the language's earliest structure. Even recent brain studies looking at trans people don't give us the evidence that some people claim. Some scans show small structural differences in areas like the BSTC or the SDMPOA. But again, these studies usually have tiny sample sizes. Most participants are on cross-sex hormones, which we know can change brain structure as far as the hypothalamus goes. Newer MRI and connectivity studies show only partial shifts towards the experienced gender, and I say that in quotes. And nothing proves these differences actually functionally make someone's brains operate like the opposite sex. Experts themselves admit the data is inconsistent, methods vary, and we simply don't have strong, reliable evidence that brains carry a hardwired gender identity separate from biological sex. Exogenous hormones used in gender affirming care can significantly disrupt the endocrine system. They interfere with the body's natural hormone feedback loops, suppress gonadal function, affect fertility, and carry risks for cardiovascular health, liver function, bone density, and metabolic regulation. While monitored therapy can mitigate some risks, many effects are irreversible, and the long term endocrine consequences, especially in adolescence, remain incompletely understood. Uh, the word woman is indispensable because it identifies the adult human female as a distinct biological and legal class. Its utility lies in anchoring reproductive biology, medical research, demographic data, sex based protections, and women's rights to a material reality. Without a stable based definition of woman, we lose linguistic clarity, scientific accuracy, legal coherence, and the ability to recognize or protect females as a group. In contrast, trans ideology is built entirely on social constructs, individual psychological schemas, and cultural stereotypes. It reduces complex biological and social realities into oversimplified notions of identity, claiming that internal feelings or external expressions can override objective sex based categories. This approach lacks coherence and measurable criteria, making it unsuitable as a basis for law, medicine, or rights. Most of all, this ideology strips women of their humanity, their language, and children, one of the most vulnerable demographics in the world.
All right, now we'll go into our first topic, which you've already kind of give your position statement on this, Corinth. So I'm going to go ahead and let Liberated do it. The first topic is going to be are trans women women? Corinth, we kind of got your statement on it. Let's get Liberated's, and then um, you'll be given the opportunity for rebuttals, Corinth. All right.
All right. Are trans women women? No. Trans women are not women because woman is a sex-based category defined by biology, not identity. The necessary and sufficient conditions for being a woman are being an adult human female. That is a person whose body is organized around the production of large gametes, regardless of whether she can produce them. Um, Trans women are male. They have an XY karyotype, testes, and reproductive development determined by the male pathway, aka the Wolffian pathway. Even after hormones or surgeries, they do not acquire female gametes, female gonads, or a female reproductive system because sex is not changed by identity, self perception, or cosmetic modification. They do not meet the biological criteria for woman.
Corinth, go ahead and open it for rebuttal from you.
Just for my clarity's sake, how long do we have for rebuttal? I don't have the message.
2 minutes. We'll do 2 minute
okay.
rebuttal.
So when we talk about things like adult human females definition, this is also something that's going to be largely social, namely on the adult aspect of it. We don't have like a hard age of adulthood that we reference for like biology. The closest thing we have is like puberty, but that gets us into really weird holes where we say like some 9-year-olds are like adults, and I don't think either of us are going to like affirm this position. So just being able to understand that neither of us are putting forward a solely biology-based definition here. Both of our definitions are going to be indexed somewhat to the social area we're in, what people's like perceptions around a bunch of these terms are. I agree if we're saying like when we say woman, we just mean adult human female, then these people are generally not women. But that's generally not what most people end up meaning when they say woman. Most people don't actually mean like, oh, this is the kind of gametes you're going to produce. This is the kind of they mean something more along the social stigma of like, oh, you are someone who tends to be more feminine or something like that. Where if I were to tell you, hey, that woman over there, we're like coworkers at a retail store. That woman over there needs help. You're not going to be looking there like, okay, which person is producing those gametes that I'm looking for? You're going to be looking for someone who presents socially feminine generally. And I think if we're using in that sense, a bunch of times we'd say like that woman over there in reference to trans women. So I think trans women can be women depending on the context we're talking about.
Is it my turn?
It is, and actually, I'm going to have. I messed that up. So Corinth gave his position statement at the very beginning. I'm going to go ahead and have him repeat it and let you give your rebuttal, and then we'll go into cross sexes. So Corinth, would you go ahead and give your position statement on this topic? Are trans women women? That way, she can give a rebuttal, and then we'll go into cross sexes.
Okay. It's probably not going to be word for word identical, but it'll be generally the same. Trans women can be women depending on the context that we're invoking the term in. In the rebuttal statement, that's going to be like one of the clear contexts. If we're just solely looking at it in terms of like, oh, when I'm saying woman, I just mean adult human female. Yes, trans women aren't women there, but I just don't believe that that's the only sense that woman can be invoked in.
Okay.
All right, liberated. Now you can give a rebuttal, and then we'll go to cross sexes where we'll ask questions for clarification on each other's position statements.
Well, I mean, my rebuttal to what Corinth has said, well, in the example that he just gave, I mean, when we say feminine, can men be feminine and still be men? Are we defining women based on femininity? Because we have feminine men doesn't mean that they're women. We have masculine women doesn't mean that they're men.
That Okay, you know what? We'll just go ahead and go to an open back and forth. Um, go ahead, and I guess you can respond here, Corinth. We'll skip the rebuttal and just go straight into cross X's here.
Yeah. So I agree that there's going to be like degrees, so we can say like this is a more feminine man or this is a more masculine woman. Just being feminine or being masculine isn't going to be like a sufficient category. I'm not even sure if I'd agree that would be necessary. I generally think that where your preferences would be best met all equal as being identified as a member of that feminine social archetype or of that masculine social archetype is what's going to make you a man or a woman in like that common parlance. But if we're just talking about like identifying someone, we might say like our good friend moderator here has like feminine cheekbones. I'm just giving like a hypothetical example here. And we can say like there might be a feminine trait in that, but that might not be categorically feminine as like the beard, all these other traits that he's presenting would be overwhelming the case and making him more masculine.
Okay, so again, if we have a man who identifies as a man, doesn't have a beard, has a face full of makeup. I mean, the best example we can use is Jeffree Star. This person says that they're a man. However, when you look at this person, I guess you could say they're reeking of femininity. However, they're still a man. And some people might even look at Jeffree Star and say, that's a woman. They have enough feminine traits to qualify. But the objective reality is that's not a woman. That's a man.
Depends on what objective reality we're trying to invoke there. Like, again, if we're talking like biologically speaking, I'm going to agree with you. But if we're talking in terms of like in a social sense, is this person more of a man or a woman? Jeffree Star tends to be fairly ambiguous in terms of how we'd like identify. But under like the way I'm presenting it, it seems to be the case that we have more evidence to believe that his preferences would be best met being identified as a man despite this, that he would still constitute a man under also my case.
So I'm wondering, it's for you, it's just based on if you have enough feminine qualities.
No, that's a third potential case of like the use case of identifying someone as a man or a woman in terms of pointing them out as a crowd. if we were to like both know Blair White, I assume you also know who Blair White is, trans
I do.
woman. If like Blair White was at our retail store and we're coworkers, and Blair White's at like needing help, I'd probably tell you, and I'd assume you'd also probably tell me, hey, that woman over there needs help, even if that, because that's what's going to point them out more than if I were to say that man over there needs help. That might make a little more of a disconnect in your mind to make it less effective at communicating who I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, sure, yeah, I could mistake Blair White for a woman, but the fundamental truth is that Blair White is a man. Um, it's it's almost along the lines of, again, this whole passability thing. I mean, if someone dresses up very nice, walks into a bank, and is not an employee but goes through an employee door, everyone around might not kick up a fuss because, oh, well, this person looks the part, this and that. But what's the fundamental truth is that they're not uh, a bank employee. They might look the part and you might mistake them for one, but fundamentally it's not true. So Blair White, you might say, oh, that woman. And for a minute, I might be like, oh, yeah, but there's still fundamental truth. All they would have to do is open their mouth and speak.
I mean, if we're talking about things like there being a fundamental truth to this, if by fundamental truth we just mean by a biological definition, again, I'm going to agree with you. But is that a fundamental truth about the person, or is that just under a different definition that you prefer a little bit more? This person meet that criteria? Because I agree there's going to be some reality truth about this person's gonads, this person's ability to perform meiosis, and what types of gametes they'd produce through this. If this is what we're to say, there is that fundamental truth. But is that fundamental truth identical to it being a fundamental truth about them being a man? Or are you just putting more value on that traditional biological definition?
I'm absolutely putting more value into the biological definition.
Yeah, I meant that more as like are we doing that, or is that identical to the fundamental truth there?
Can you like clarify that question?
So we agree that you're putting more value on this definition. I'm not saying that is like a bad thing, but you just have a higher value for a biological definition. Is that biological definition, because you put more value on it, now identical to the fundamental truth about what gametes they produce? Or is that just, well, there is a fundamental truth about the gametes they produce, and I put more value on this identifier related to those gametes than this other identifier related to things like phenotypical traits?
I think you're putting more value on phenotypical traits.
Yeah, I am. I generally put more value on those things. Again, I'm not saying this is like a disparaging thing. It's just more of like, are we talking about a fundamental truth here, or are we talking about which identifier we see as generally more useful and more valuable?
I think when it comes to where precision matters, like medicine, law, sports, safeguarding, data collection, reproductive biology, we would definitely have to put more value on my definition.
For some of them, I would probably agree with you, like reproductive biology. But for law, we generally have two different definitions here. We both have sex-based discriminatory laws, and we also have gender identity-based discriminatory laws. I don't think us saying we add on those gender identity discriminatory laws is at all damaging to sex-based discriminatory laws or any other laws safeguarding sex-based issues.
But I mean, gender identity is a subjective psychological experience.
Yeah, but generally when we talk about age of adulthood, for it to be like adult human female for that kind of thing, it also is a social subjective experience of when we identify this person as like an adult. There's not like we're not measuring it to a biological point.
Well, we have a legal,
Yeah.
We have, legal adulthood, which would be the age of 18.
Yeah, but that legality and legal systems are
Well, yeah, of
generally
course,
social, right?
Yeah, no, of course. But even if we look at biology again, I mean, you have reached full maturation when your clavicle has fused, which that could be anywhere, I believe, from, let's see, 18 to 25.
Yeah. So if we're talking about that as like a marker, we can look at particular people to see, are they adult human female? But that's not what we mean when we're talking about in a legal sense, right? We're not using that biological definition of adulthood. We're using the legal age of adulthood, which
Well, yeah.
is largely social. Like both of our definitions do rely on like an idea of social aspect to it. We just generally measure it onto different points. Like yours relies on the age part, mine it relies on like, I just don't think that any of that's relevant.
I have no more cross-examination for Corinth on this topic number 1.
All right, so I'm going to ask some clarifying questions here because I seem a little bit confused because it doesn't seem like either of you could agree on the definition of a woman. So could you guys clarify that for me? It sounds like you guys didn't come to any kind of clarification at all on that.
I just agree that the definition Liberty of Woman is using is a definition of it. I just don't think that's the sole definition of it.
All right. Our next topic will be, should trans women enter women's spaces? And Corinth, I'll let you lead on this one. So if you want to give your position statement on, or actually, you know what? Liberate, you give your position statement on it, and then Corinth will have you give your rebuttal.
Okay. Should trans women enter women's spaces? No. Women's spaces exist to protect females because females face specific vulnerabilities from males. So since trans women are biologically male, they should not access this space because it exists for the protection, respect, as well as their privacy and dignity. This is not about individual trans women, but about safeguarding based on sex, which is a clear objective boundary. So policies must be created and upheld for the category of male people because risk is tied to sex, not identity.
All right, Corinth, your rebuttal.
Am I giving my own position statement or am I giving a rebuttal?
Or your own position statement, forgive me.
You're good. I just want to get a little clarity on that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to take like a slightly weaker position than like the really strong lefty claim here of yes, everyone. I think it's going to depend on like the kind of space we're talking about and any particular risks a given individual propose. A lot of what and where I'm guessing this might end up going is something like women's prisons, a lot of that kind of thing. Now, there is the case of like the lefty case of trans women tend to be at higher risk of a lot of those harms that we'd separate women out from for in male prisons than even women are in these terms. I agree if we have trans women, like in the Britain study, where we just take people, hey, what prison do you want to go to? Identify yourself here. And we saw a lot of people convicted of sex crimes end up at that point for the first time in their life identifying as women in an attempt to try and get there. If we have that kind of case, I think obviously we should take a little bit more precaution given on the individual. But if we have someone like a trans woman convicted of like a white collar crime, we have seen no risks from them there, and they're being predated on in the male's prison, I think it's probably fine to try and move them over to the women's prison. You probably want to give them a little bit more of a watch there at the beginning, see if there's any kind of like excess risk or anything like that. And if not, it's probably better off there just because everyone's safer in this case. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say if a trans woman commits a white collar crime, um, it should be fine to move them to the women's prison. But even then, you said maybe watch them at the beginning. If you're asserting that there's no risk, why would there be a need to even watch?
Oh, I'm not asserting that there is no risk. I just think that we have to do risk analysis here, right? We're analyzing the risk that this person is undergoing in this other prison versus the risk that they'd propose in this new prison. We'd see, hey, is this risk actually going to obtain here? We can double check them, watch to make sure everything's going fine, And if that's the case, and we see, hey, this person's not proposing a meaningful risk to the other women, despite having a large risk in the male prison to themselves, it's probably going to be a little bit safer for everyone in that case. I don't think like any of this kind of thing is going to be risk-free.
Well, I mean, yeah, especially when we're talking about people who have been convicted of committing crimes. I mean, they're not in there for being a part of the Christian Tabernacle Choir. But again, when a woman gets in trouble and gets sentenced to prison, they go to the women's prison. There's no need for this like risk assessment when it comes to gender. So again, are we going to watch every single trans woman that goes to a women's prison? Is that going to be like a new thing that's going to be implemented for the safety of the trans woman? I don't think that it's a woman's problem to, I don't want to say the word protect, but it's not a woman's issue if this quote trans woman doesn't feel safe in a men's prison. That's not our problem.
So if we say that, we're probably going to agree with this, and I'm just going to ask just for clarity here. We agree that we should have women's prisons because of an excess risk to women in those cases, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So we acknowledge that we're pulling people out of this general population, giving them their own area because they're at a larger risk here, and we don't think that there's as much of a risk between themselves there to propose we need like that third case, or to move them to like a solitary condition, right?
Clarify that, please.
When we're making the women's prison and we pull them out of a general prison population, we set up a women's prison and we set them up in this prison because we don't think the risk they're going to be proposing between those inmates in this prison is enough to make like another subset where we pull people to like solitary, because we just pull those people to like solitary or a high risk prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in cases like this, I'm not sure why we wouldn't at least be open to the idea of, hey, it might be the case that this is very generally a women's prison. And we even might use like a female prison just for like, if I use female prison here for like clarity's sake, would that be fine?
Yeah, I mean, well, when you say female prison, trans women don't qualify.
Yeah, but if we're saying like this is a female prison, why can't we just mean this is very generally a female prison in terms of like 99%, but other people who would not pose a risk to this population, we can put in there, or would not pose a meaningful risk, and then we just watch them to make sure any of that risk doesn't obtain, because they are at a very large risk in this other prison population, just like women would be if we put them in there.
See, but again, it's not other women's problem if this person is at risk at a male prison. They're males. So I mean, when are we putting them there for their own affirmation again? Like this societal, like this person needs societal affirmation of, well, I got in trouble, but I want to go to a women's prison. And you're saying even if it's just 99% females and maybe 1% trans women, I mean, again, is this for their own affirmation?
No, it wouldn't be for their own affirmation. It would be to make sure the prison population isn't getting like essayed in prison. I think that's generally like a bad thing when we have prisoners, and trans women are at a much higher risk of being essayed in male prisons. Probably not to the degree that we'd say like a cis woman would be if we put her in that prison, but it's significantly raised over other men or males. So if we were to say, hey, for your own protection, as long as there isn't any red flags that we see that would be like, you would be a risk to these females in the women's prison, we're going to move you there for your own safety.
Again, I don't think that even in prison, I don't think that the majority should bend the knee to the 1% just because of their own safety. I mean, they have chose to do with their body what they have chosen to do. They have chosen to identify as us. And if they get in trouble, I mean, it's not, I stand firm. It's not up to women, a man that us. That falls under not our problem.
We're not talking about like women's problem there. We're talking about like the prison system's problem there, and like what the prison system is setting out to do, because it's not like the individual women's prisoners' choice of like who else is going to go into this prison. It's generally the prison system, and once you end up taking stewardship of these people because you deem them to be like either guilty of some crime or needing to be in some sort of like isolation to prevent any potential harms out into like the broader population of America or whatever country we're talking about. Once we take stewardship over these people, we do have some degree of obligation insofar as to like try and prevent them from getting any excess harms onto themselves, either from like the other people who we're taking stewardship of, like if we have like serial predators in prison versus like a cis woman in that did a white collar crime. I think it's really bad to put her at excess bodily risk by keeping her in the prison with that man. And that's why I'm in favor of this woman's prison. I also think that this applies like identically to the trans woman here. As long as she's not posing the excess risk to the other woman, that we probably shouldn't have her be at excess risk to herself by being around this other population of inmates.
Well, here's the thing. Every prison, I mean, has segregation. Like they have and they also have protective custody pods. I mean, there are gay men that go into these protective custody pods in male prisons. I mean, a trans woman can go there. I mean, those are the safeguards within the prison is segregation or protective custody. Why? Like, it's not a necessity for this trans woman to go to a women's prison. They can go into protective custody in the male's prison or in a protective pod with other people that might be at risk for any violence or sexual assaults.
Yeah, we can say like this is another possibility, but by having like protective custody and the more people we have in protective custody, this just raises the costs of prison systems because we need a higher ratio of guards to prisoners for them to be in protective custody. If we want to just keep funneling in like taxpayer dollars to raise prisons so we get a lot more babysitter prison guards, we might be able to like, talk about this as like a potential third policy that's also effective. I think that generally we're not going to get that funding, and we need to think through things like what we can actually generally achieve. And one of those things I think is a lot more feasible to achieve rather than upping the amount of prison guards we have by like 10% to get better like custody chains for protective custody is people that don't propose the risk to women at like a meaningfully raised rate get a little bit more watching as they go in originally, and then we make sure that like they're safe there as well.
So are you looking out for the budget of the prison system over protecting women's sex segregated space? Because you're talking about funding. I mean, I would gladly pay higher taxes to make sure that women maintain even that sex segregated space. So, I mean, is it absolutely take more taxes out, increase the funding. I mean, that's where I'm at. And again, it's not a woman's worry about government funding for more guards in these protective custody pods. It's not our problem. So I don't know. I think I'm asking, are you worried more about the funding aspect, because you've mentioned that a lot?
I'm not more worried about this. It's the difference between like if we're talking about an ideal policy versus like practical policy. I think you'd probably agree that you've seen a bunch of people that whenever they hear someone doing like a crime that they think is bad, it's like, okay, I hope this person gets essayed in prison and then we bury them under the concrete, right?
I mean,
like
yeah,
it's
I know people say that.
like this kind of sentiment, because a lot of people generally don't look at prisons and think like, well, I care much about the people that go there, despite of like a particular crime they committed being like white collar or not. They see like, oh, morally bad person, they get morally bad thing done to them. The point where if we say, well, we need to create a policy that's going to increase funding of prisons by like 10-15% just to have protective custody, I don't think this is politically achievable in modern America. I do think what's politically achievable is us to say, hey, as long as these people don't pose a meaningful risk to the female population in the women's prison, they should be it should be open to them being transferred there.
Well, I don't agree. Again, women have a right to a sex segregated space, even if they've committed a crime. Um, even then, there's always a risk. Um, so let's see. According to the United Nations Office on we'll say drugs and crime globally, about 90% of persons brought into formal contact with police for intentional homicide are males. um and according to national intimate partner and sexual violence survey and incident of rape, estimated 99% of female rape victims reported only male perpetrators. Average strength comparisons. I mean, males have 40 to 60% greater absolute upper body strength than females. The male advantage is particularly strong in shoulder, extensor, elbow, flexors, and grip strength. Um, and then there was a woman, speaking of prison, there was a woman that filed a lawsuit in 2024 and states that she was RAP'd by a man posing as a transgender woman in her prison while she was serving her time. So, I mean,
Yeah, I agree. We should be very careful of like red flags, right? If this person was convicted of sexual crimes against women, they shouldn't be up for that because that's going to be very bad. I think I brought up the Britain study that people tend to reference for that reason. When you ID sexual predators, they might be more likely to ID themselves as trans women trying to get into the women's prison. I think if we're going to do this policy, we need to be very thorough in making sure, hey, this person's not a meaningful risk to women, as well as we give that, or the other women prisoners, as well as we give them extra guarding to make sure that this doesn't happen, at least at the beginning, until we like are able to confirm, okay, this person's not a meaningful threat raised to the prison and to the safety of the other prisoners.
even just that concept, it's insanity that it's like, okay, now we need to implement new policies just to have a man go into a women's prison. Like that's what I'm saying. This ideology is just going so far.
I mean, we're not really like implementing new policies. This is just we're adding more places for potential holdings for these given prisoners, depending on the crimes and the risks they provide. This is generally how the system we go through. Like if you have a murderer, they'll generally go to medium or high security prison beforehand. You generally remove the set of like low security prison. You generally take off the list of like women's prisons if they're like a male, things like this. The only thing I'm advocating for is we also put other prisons potentially into that sentencing list or into transfer lists if they are at like large threats.
Well, again, we're just going to fundamentally disagree because I believe if a quote trans woman gets in trouble, they should go to a male prison. If they are worried about, their safety, they can request to go to protective custody pod, or even this might be inhumane, I guess, but even like a lockdown where they have their single cell, and that's that's where I stand. It's not going to change.
How about
I
this
believe
question then?
men.
Why shouldn't someone hold the same view for just like women going to prison, right? We shouldn't have women's prisons. If women feel unsafe in general pop, why not just have them request to go into like protective custody or all these other things?
Women can go into protective custody in a women's prison if they don't feel safe.
No, like
Both
why don't we
prisons
just
have
abolish women's prisons? Have them all go into one prison. And if the women feel unsafe in like the unisex prison gen pop, they can request to go into protective custody.
I mean potentially, I guess in a possible world that could be a thing, right? But I mean, again, they are sex segregated for a reason.
Yeah, and I think we probably agree the reason is they pose a lower risk to the other women than the risk posed to them by being by a bunch of the males in the prison. We generally segregate them out for protection of themselves, and then we do further segregation at that point if they are at greater risk. I just think that, hey, I don't see why we only cut this at like sex. If there's this other group that has the same risk, and you're saying, well, I just don't think that other group should be in consideration here. And like I just don't understand why this line should be drawn in the sand right here and say like all these other people should be at the same risks that like all these cis women were at, or at probably a slightly lower rate, but they are at a highly inflated risk of these essays in prison, things like this, that made us create these prisons in the first case.
Again, women historically have been oppressed by men. Men have the ability to overpower them and impregnate them. Any space, bathrooms, locker rooms, prisons, these should all be sex segregated. Bottom line, full stop. And I have no more I guess you would say cross examination for Corinth.
This was more of an open discussion, so the format on it just Corinth, do you have any closing on or anything else on this particular topic?
Do we want to talk about like a different type of space other than prisons, or do we want to just like call this?
I was going to do some clarification and talk about, maybe going into locker rooms. I mean, we were just talking about prisons. Maybe we change subjects or different areas.
Like I'm fine with going to talk about different areas if Liberated Woman wants to go into those areas. If we just want to move on to the next topic, and if she wants to do that, I'm happy to do that as well.
We can address restrooms. I mean, that's the biggest one. We can do that. One more space.
Okay. Do you want to take the lead on that one since I took the lead on prisons?
Well, I mean, again, restrooms. I mean, there are so many things that women do in a restroom besides go number one and number two. There are women that have had miscarriages in bathrooms. There are women who are homeless that want to take off the one outfit that they own on their body and wash it in the sink and disrobe and they deserve the privacy away from men to do so. And again, passability does not matter to me. Penile inversions do not matter to me. Women are particularly vulnerable in this sense because they are literally pulling their pants down. And again, it's a safeguard and a boundary that just shouldn't be crossed by men who think that they are women.
I'm just in favor of like expanding homeless shelters and any sort of like services to help cases of that woman who's trying to wash her single outfit. I'm heavily in favor of any proposed policies to supplement those things. I think that is also something that is more politically feasible than trying to like say, hey, we need to do whatever tests we can, or like potentially add like trespass to people, because it probably wouldn't be charges as far as I'm aware. It would, at best, they would need to be trespassed. So I guess we'd have to go outside of talking about the law here and go into just like general like social stigmatization. And if we're talking about you saying women should feel safe in doing whatever they're doing, not inside the stall, would they generally feel more safe if they have someone like Blair White walking behind them to go into the stall, or someone like Buck Angel going to the stall? If we're talking about how safe they feel with the perception of people in that room to them, that would just be a quick talk about like passability.
Yeah, I mean, if Buck Angel walked into the women's restroom, of course people are gonna be like, okay, wait, whoa. But again, Buck Angel is a woman. Um, Passability, again, it makes no difference to me. Buck Angel would not be wrong in using the women's restroom because that space was designed for Buck Angel. Um,
I mean, yeah,
Blair
Buck
White,
Angel wouldn't be wrong in doing that, but when we're talking about the reason it's bad is the concerns of the other people in that bathroom and whatever they're doing, wouldn't that just be related to how they can perceive the passability of the people behind them as they're like looking into the mirror and they see that person going?
I mean, sure, again, you we would look at Buck Angel and be like, that's probably a man, right? But does Buck Angel have a penis that she can use to grape somebody? Or
As
does
far as the person in
Blair
the bathroom thinks, probably. They probably do think, hey, this person does have a penis that they can do that. And if they're like walking to the stall behind them, they'd probably feel more unsafe with Buck Angel there than if they saw Blair White walking to the stall. Because they wouldn't think, oh, this person has a penis that they can do that with.
but again, we're going to be deadlocked on this. Passability means nothing to me. Of course, somebody would maybe kick up a fuss and be like, wait a minute, but that's when you can ask, hey, like maybe self ID, like that's when that would come. I'm not denying the fact that there are women that would be like, what the heck, like that's, of course they would, I would.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it's not like is passability in and of itself something you care about. More so, wouldn't the concerns you're bringing up about why we should keep trans women out of these bathrooms largely be indexed to passability?
I mean, socially, I mean, yeah, of course, like I said, I'm not denying that if Buck Angel walked into the bathroom, even I wouldn't be like, wait a minute, right? But again, that is their space that was made for them. That was not a space made for Blair White. I don't care how many surgeries this person's had. I don't, again, um, penis out or inverted, doesn't matter. Um, I mean, that's really all I have to say regarding the bathrooms. There's women do a lot of things in there other than go number one and number two, and they're specific, especially vulnerable in a restroom. And
Yeah,
I don't think that men, no matter what they look like, should cross that boundary.
I mean, if we're talking about how vulnerable they are, and we're not even talking about like would it actually be acted upon, because at that point we're just saying, should people who are going to essay women in women's bathrooms be allowed in women's bathrooms, in which case we're both just going to say no, they shouldn't, right? Like we're talking about how these people using the bathrooms end up feeling, how safe they feel while in there. In this case, if it's like if Buck Angel felt fine going to the men's bathroom, wouldn't it be like better for him to do that, because all the other women who are in that bathroom who would feel unsafe by seeing him there, um, they would feel unsafe by seeing him there. So if he's fine going to the male's bathroom, they don't feel unsafe, he doesn't feel unsafe, everyone's a little bit happier.
But again, why is this? Again, this is all about that person's feelings. Again, it is not women's problem to care how this person would feel using a bathroom that was not made for them. A woman, if they saw Buck Angel, has every right to be like, hey, and then self ID would come in and then, oh, okay, you're a woman, and keep it pushing. I mean, it's not society's responsibility to affirm transgendered people when they want to use spaces that were not made for them. It's all
I,
about affirmation to
I
these
mean, in this
people.
case, I'm not even talking about affirmation. The only feelings I'm really bringing up here, yes, I'm saying like Buck Angel would have to feel okay using the men's bathroom there. But the primary feelings I'm talking about here are the other women in the women's bathroom. and how they would feel seeing someone like Buck Angel walking into like the stall as they're doing whatever they were doing in the mirror there. I think that generally, if we're saying Buck Angel's fine using the men's bathroom, we're able to help the feelings of those women who would feel somewhat unsafe by seeing Buck Angel pass behind him, pass behind them, if he were to just use the men's bathroom at that point.
Well, that would just be like a transient, like, uncomfortability. I mean, again, self ID, find out, oh, okay, you're a woman. Okay, that's fine. And then they move on.
I mean, if we're talking about like the transient uncomfortability, like we don't even have that transient uncomfortability if like Blair White's going there, because so just perceiving, they'd see Blair White, they'd be like, oh, it's a woman. I don't need to go check if they like ID as like a woman there. I don't need to go confirm that they think themselves as like a woman.
But
You don't even get that like transient uncomfortability.
Not every single woman is going to think that Blair White's a woman.
The vast majority, if Blair White's just like walking into the stall to go do whatever Blair White does in the bathroom, and they're like doing all the things you described that they do in the bathroom where they'd see Blair White there. I don't think most would be like checking hard enough to see like that person there, Adam's apples, like protruding a little bit too much.
I mean, some would, some wouldn't. Again, we can't say exactly what every single woman would do.
No, we can make like heuristical guesses. Like, would the majority of women, like in like a passing glance of Blair White, just snap their fingers and say "man," or would they be like, "Okay," and just keep doing their own thing?
The majority.
Can you guess what you think the majority of people would do there? Because we guessed like the majority of people would probably do the opposite with Buck Angel. They'd like ID Buck Angel and say, "Oh, that looks like a man."
Well, yeah, in passing, of course, a woman would think that Blair White is just another woman, of course. Not all, though. Some, not all.
Yeah, but like probably the majority at this point. So we'd say like we can probably avoid the transient uncomfortability just by having Blair White use the women's bathroom, Buck Angel use the men's bathroom, as long as like they're not doing anything wrong to the other people in there. But we're just going to agree if they're going to do something wrong to the other people in there. I don't think if women are going to like just start doing something weird to the other women in the bathroom that they should even be allowed to go into the bathroom either.
But again, Blair White can look as passing as they want. Unfortunately for Blair White, they are a part of the demographic that commits the most sexual assaults, robberies, regular assaults, and unalivings. So again, it's just now if we are letting men who claim that they're women in, now we've only increased the risk, because the risk is there, right? Statistically, but now we're increasing it.
Are we actually increasing the risk, especially if we're just talking about, hey, we probably should require some degree of like passability for these things? Would a bunch of these people who are just going there to like, I'm going to go SA this woman in the bathroom, do we think that they're going to go get like a boob job beforehand? They're going to be on estrogen for like over a year and things like this just to be able to get into that space that they could have just like walked in the first case and done it, what they were going to do wrong there anyway?
I mean,
it's probably very unlikely, right?
The amount of effort, again, makes no difference to me. So the surgeries, the estrogen, the commitment, so to speak, to wanting to appear more feminine doesn't make a difference to me. Doesn't change the risk.
I mean, it does change the risk, right? Like if I told you there's just like some random person walking down the street, you'd probably feel like a little bit more at risk walking next to them than if you knew that they were like some really well-off person. Like they were wearing like a nice suit, they were coming out of like some finance agency with a coffee and like their other like guy wearing a suit. We'd probably feel a little bit safer next to them than like the general population person, because we'd see that person has like a lot more to lose, or they put in like a lot more effort into their life to the point where they don't have that like excess risk.
I mean, the effort, again, it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't wash with me, because even if we're using the man in the business suit, I mean, does that mean that the man in the business suit isn't capable of committing any kind of crime? Or like, again, the passability doesn't mean anything to me.
I mean, this is the implication with that kind of statement, though, is just saying, like, well, women can't commit crimes either. There have been a ton of cases of women assaulting other women and doing all these other things to other women.
Yeah,
At
I'm
this
not saying
point, we're
women
just
don't do.
advocating for, like, single-use bathrooms, in which, like, okay, we can advocate for that if we want to mitigate all risk. But if we're talking about just, like, what's the most effective way to mitigate risk itself, it's probably, as well as, like, making the other people in the bathroom feel comfortable, it's probably going to be Buck Angel doesn't use the women's bathroom, Blair White probably doesn't use the men's bathroom. Maybe we say, like, all trans people use the men's bathroom because men are going to be less caring about that kind of thing. But that wouldn't say, like, Buck Angel should be using the women's bathroom, at least.
I mean, do men not deserve privacy as well in their sex segregated space?
I don't think most men would, like, care if they saw someone, like,
But
go
don't
in,
they
like,
deserve it?
I don't think that you'd be, like, doing something wrong by not doing that. So no, I wouldn't say there's, like, a desert there or deservance.
Well, I think that's where we diverge even more, is because I do believe that men deserve a space segregated for the male sex, and women deserve a space segregated for the female sex. I believe that both sexes deserve that privacy in those vulnerable spaces where they're disrobing.
Like, I guess, do you think, like, ancient Rome was doing something, whatever, like, type of deservance we're saying there, they were doing something wrong in each of, like, the thermas that didn't have sex segregated disrobing areas?
I mean, we're talking about ancient Rome, like,
Yeah, like, if they deserve this area, then, like, ancient Rome was failing at giving them this thing they deserved.
yeah, I would say ancient Rome was failing then. Because even in ancient Rome, males and females deserve privacy when they're disrobing
Do you
in
think,
any
like,
in any form.
in, like, like a uh ancient people states of, like, we're a wandering tribe of hunter gatherers, like, we don't have that, like, segregated space because we don't have that a designated space at all? Are we, like,
Well,
getting failed by that point too, or
I mean, at that point, a woman should go use the bathroom, or not bathroom, it wouldn't even be a bathroom, right?
yeah, same.
Should go urinate or go number two in a segregated tree, behind a segregated hut. I you can
Like,
still, I mean, we're talking about hunter gatherers.
yeah, it's more of just to say, like, when we say that they deserve this thing, it does seem a little bit silly when we actually think about what that would mean for, like, all of human history of, like, well, if men and women deserve these things, then for, like, 99.9% of human history, they're both just getting failed by every system, including nature itself. Which I think is a little
Well,
bit silly, but we can.
but when we're talking about 2025 public spaces, buildings, where they can establish these spaces, and absolutely. I mean, yeah, back in, if someone's a hunter gatherer back in those times, I mean, yeah, there was no, like, of, official, like, public areas, buildings, structures, banks, stores, like malls, but we're in 2025, right? So we're not in ancient Rome, we're not hunter gatherers. um so that's just
Yeah,
kind of, to me,
I
it's
think
just a little irrelevant.
that's just to say, like, we're not saying that there's, like, a sense of deservance there if we say, like, it's fine for those people. It's more of just, like, it you might think it's, like, better if this were to be the case, but it's not like they're, like, failing in doing something better that they have the capability of doing, but it's not like they're failing at giving them something that they do deserve.
Well, I mean, again, even back then, men and women deserve privacy when they're using the restroom or disrobing for various reasons other than consented sexual activity. So, and that's
You,
my stance. It's just not. It's not going to change.
I guess I have one more question then. You were bringing up a lot of like the risks associated with it, right? Would you think that like it would be worse for like a black trans woman to then use the bathroom because there is also like the increased risk for like racial crime statistics and things like this than like an Asian trans woman?
So, racial statistics. I mean, what are the crime statistics when it comes to race?
There's been a lot higher like rates of people who are of African American descent or Hispanic descent to be committing violent crimes, both against men and women, like sexual crimes as well. It's very underrepresented by Asians and like East Islanders, things like that general racial group, and how we generally categorize them. I can pull up the FBI statistics if you want, or if, like
No,
that's going to be like the
I was
intention.
just genuinely wondering if
Yeah.
it is higher. But I mean, again, so then would we advocate for racially segregated spaces like we did decades and decades ago?
Like I don't think that this is something that we should be advocating for, right? I think that this might be the implication of your view when we talk about, well, the risk being provided there by Blair White of being
Amongst
a
males
man.
and females, not
Yeah,
races.
but like a
That doesn't
race, it
apply here.
applies of races too, right? Like the racial crime demographics are going to pull up at like Asian people being surrounded by a bunch of like people of African American or Hispanics are going to be at a higher risk of violent crimes than if they're around other Asians. So do we make that segregated Asian space as well to protect them?
No, we're not talking about race. I would never advocate for racially segregated spaces. We're talking about segregation based on sex, not race. So I do understand what you're saying because you are trying to follow my logic, right? But we are not talking about race. We are talking about sexes.
Do you think that do you find it at all like at least a little bit troubling that like the kind of reasoning you're using can at least be applied to like 1950s segregation and Jim Crow laws?
I mean, with under that logic, I mean, of course somebody could trickle it down and take it even further, but I'm not that's not what I'm stating here. I reject that entire argument.
Okay.
All right, so we wrapping that one up. This is entering into women's spaces. Are we good on that one, guys?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Our next topic is going to be, is gender affirming care life-saving medical? And the way we're going to do it is we're each going to give a position statement, and then we're just going to do it back and forth because apparently we can't do the rebuttals and the cross-examination efficiently. So I'm going to have each of you give a position statement, and then we'll just do a little back and forth. Whoever gives let's see. I believe we're on you, Corinth, giving your position statement first. Did you give it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Give your position statement here, and then she'll give her position statement, and then Corinth, you can go ahead and start the back and forth after she gives hers.
Okay. I think the argument I kind of want to make for this is going to be fairly simple. Suicide chances of transgender people don't always fail. We have this study of 55 studies done by Cornell under What We Know that shows that the majority, if not all, end up showing that there is a reduction in suicide chances. This is going to lead to a reduction in suicide via some chances are just going to not be failing. In those cases, it's going to be saving the lives of those people. This is going to mean that transgender care is going to be life-saving treatment for those people.
Dude, that's so cool.
Okay. Do you want me to make my
Yep.
statement?
Give your position, and then he's actually going to start the back and forth after you give your position.
Okay. So when we talk about life-saving treatment, we're talking about treatments that directly save lives, like insulin for a diabetic, electric cardioversion for someone whose heart has gone into a dangerous arrhythmia or has stopped completely. We're talking about definitive volume replacement for people who are going through hypovolemic shock from rapid blood loss, heart transplants, liver transplants, kidney transplants. I mean, these are examples of actual life-saving treatments. I don't dispute that some trans people feel better after receiving exogenous hormones, penile inversions, breast implants, but calling them life-saving is misleading. So again, I have a study. It's called The Risk of Suicide and Self-Harm Following Gender-Affirming Surgery, Affirmation Surgery. The authors concluded in their data set, gender-affirming surgery was significantly associated with elevated unaliving attempts 12-fold.
Am I good to start?
Yep, go ahead.
With the study you brought up there, is it comparing elevated unaliving attempts to the general population, or is it comparing it to other trans people who do not go through the surgery?
Let's see. I mean, if you do you want me to give you the PMID?
Yeah.
Sure. 386 99117.
You said 386-99197?
No, 117.
117, okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, this is just comparing it to the general population. In the sense, like, I'd agree people that are more likely to die taking chemotherapy than like if they're not taking chemotherapy, but that's not isolating out for if they also have cancer, right? Like if we give chemotherapy to people without cancer, it's going to be harmful. People who take chemotherapy are probably more likely to die. That doesn't tell us that like chemotherapy isn't helping people with cancer not die, though.
And your study, is this like self-reported, like a survey?
I can toss this in the studio chat here. It's Cornell compiled 55 studies. 51 of them showed that improves well-being of trans people. 4 studies showed mixed or null results. This is somewhat expected under the 0.05 p-value that most studies end up going for.
And so, can I have like the?
It's in the studio chat.
Okay, hold on. Let me look. I've never used this before, so let me see.
If you're on your computer, there's going to be a little chat bubble in the bottom right, and then it'll pop up all the kinds of chats with like public chat, and then it's in studio chat there.
Can you guys still hear me, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's see. 55 studies.
Do we all have a plushie like that? Because I do. Why is your mom actually a fucking super good?
Okay, let's see. Researchers examined all peer-reviewed studies published in English from 1991 to 2017. Okay, so yeah, again, we have the selection bias.
I mean, selection bias is significantly less impactful than just like being inapt at trying to measure what we're doing, right?
And again, most of the studies use self-reported questionnaires. So wouldn't you say that, I mean, if this is a questionnaire, right? Wouldn't you say that the person that wants the surgery, that wants the hormones, wouldn't they absolutely say, well, if I don't get this, I absolutely feel like I'm gonna unalive. I mean, again, it's just not super reliable when they're going on self-report. People are
I
gonna
mean,
say
we might
anything
say
they
it's
want to
like
get what they want.
unreliable, right? Like, the question is, this isn't being self-reported to the psychologists who are going to be diagnosing them and recommending treatment. This is self-reporting to a different survey trying to compile this information. So they don't have that sort of motive to try and get like the affirming care that they're seeking by lying on this thing. We might say that, like, in terms of diagnosing, this is an increased risk, and I'd probably agree. But the amount of desistance rate seems to be low enough that it's affirming to us that, hey, people aren't just like lying to their practitioners to a meaningful degree, and that our guardrails on it are so strict that even if people are lying, they're not like lying in a way that's going to cause them to like be misdiagnosed. We're just so narrow in how we diagnose people. But if we're talking about like the studies here, we can say that like people are lying about studies like this, but in that case, we just get to, well, it's kind of up in the air. We don't know if people are like committing suicide, despite the fact that one of the most common like right-wing jokes about trans people is go join the 41%, referencing the 41% of transgender individuals who've attempted suicide in their life or unaliving their life. I'm extremely sorry. And when we look at even the study you brought up, it was 3% of those people attempted suicide and they went through gender-affirming care and surgery in their life, which is still like a 12 times risk over the general population. But these are people with a medical condition that one of the parts of that medical condition of gender dysphoria, one of the symptoms is suicidality.
Yeah, no, I mean that risk is already there, right? You would say.
Yeah.
But here's my problem when we go study for study, because you can find, especially with this, you can find a flaw in every study, right? You can try to poke holes in every study. You have yours, I have mine. It could literally just go study for study for study, and there's flaws in each one.
I mean, yeah, there are like
But my,
flaws in each study, but the flaw in the study you brought up here is they're comparing these people to the general population. It's like if I'm making a study that's saying chemotherapy doesn't work because the death rate of chemo patients is higher than the death rate of people who aren't chemo patients. And it's like, well, because the non-chemo patients don't have cancer, right? Like, this isn't telling us the effectivity of chemotherapy at all. We're just not having a proper control group here for us to measure the effect of this.
yeah, I mean, but when the question is gender affirming care life-saving treatment, I listed out what actual life-saving treatment is. Now
Like, I
this,
agree with you.
can
Those
it
are all life-saving
reduce?
treatments. I also agree that anything that's going to cause people to not die by having this, one of those things you can die from is unaliving, like self-unaliving, self-deletion. If we don't have people doing that as high of a rate, as long as some percent of attempts are going to be successful, then this is saving at least some lives. If we want to say like saving a treatment that's going to save people's lives is not life-saving treatment, I think we're just too far into the semantics to make like any like headway at that point.
I mean, I can agree on that. Um, I'm not denying that, quote, gender affirming care reduces the risk of someone wanting to unalive themselves because they want to transition, right? But again, maybe I am focusing on the semantics, right? because when I think of life-saving treatment, I think of everything that I just listed um, in my statement. So to me, this is more reducing a risk um, than it being actual life-saving treatment. I think this is maybe harm reduction.
And that harm is, at least in some case, like death or unalivance, right?
Yeah, some.
So if we're reducing the like unalivance, I'm not. If we agree like substantively, this treatment is going to cause less people to be unalived. I'm fine with that then.
I mean, if we're talking about human beings, I don't think that unaliving is good ever, right? But to me, it's not life, like true life saving treatment. I think is harm reduction. So I think
I
we're probably deadlocked on that one too. Like,
I think like people not being alive is probably harmful. So if that's the kind of harm we're reducing, I'm not sure these two things are incompatible. I think like dialysis to a guy with kidney failure is both life saving and harm reduction. I think it's like both of those.
well, I mean, yeah, no, I would agree when you put it that way. I would agree with that statement. But again, when I think of life saving treatment, gender affirming care is not at the top of the list for me.
All right, are we both good on that?
I am.
Corinth, you got a follow-up question?
Nope.
All right, our next subject is going to be, should minors receive gender-affirming care? And we're both going to take 2 minutes to give our position statements. Liberated, we'll have you go first this time, then Corinth, and then Liberated, you can start the discussion.
Okay. No, minors should not receive gender affirming care, like medical interventions, because these treatments can carry some harms, target a population whose identity is still developing, um, and a lack of long term evidence of safety or benefit is there. Children cannot consent to sterilizing interventions. They are still developing cognitively and emotionally. We cannot treat psychological distress with irreversible medicalization in the absence of strong evidence. The CAS review demonstrates that the current model of pediatric gender medicine has been driven by ideology rather than science. Children cannot give informed consent to gender affirming medical treatments. Children I'm sorry. Let me get my words here together. Adolescents are emotionally driven. They're socially vulnerable, neurologically incapable of evaluating lifelong consequences. Informed consent requires a developed brain, and children simply do not have that.
Your position, Corinth?
For my position, I am going to generally end up being a lot softer on this position. The studies we have on how gender affirming care impacts minors is a lot less than we have on how it impacts adults, largely because there's a bigger ethical concern when we're doing experimental treatment on children and things like this. Though, for this reason, I'm generally going to end up deferring to people like the American Academy of Pediatrics, which does affirm that gender affirming care for minors is something that we should do. I'm going to appeal to things like the JAMA study in terms of saying that it does seem at least to be giving positive health effects and mental health effects for these people. And if we continue to see this sort of research done, we should continue to do this, but we should increase the amount of studies we do on this kind of treatment for people of this age.
Mm. I absolutely do not support chemically castrating children, blocking their puberty. Puberty is not a pathology, it's not a disease. Um, you're literally, for lack of a better word, screwing with a healthy developing endocrine system. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's completely unethical for for a minor to consent to altering their endocrine system. I mean, they're going to be married to an endocrinologist for the rest of their lives. Again, puberty is a very natural, healthy part of development. It's being treated as a disease. Now, as far as mental health goes, absolutely. Take your child to a psychologist, take your child to a therapist, take your child maybe to a psychiatrist. But to use medications to block their puberty and stop a very natural healthy function when they haven't even themselves been able to evaluate those lifelong risks, I'm yeah, no, it's completely insane to me. Leave the children alone.
Did you kind of?
Adults,
I'm sorry to cut in. Did you kind of have before you go off a little bit, kind of have a question here for Corinth on his stance, if you don't mind?
Go for it.
No, I was saying liberated rather than just because you already kind of gave your position statement. I wanted you to kind of engage Corinth on his, right? So you gave your position, he gave his position, and then you had the opportunity to engage him with his. So kind of I was trying to get you to put a more directed question on his position.
I addressed he mentioned mental health, and I addressed that. Um absolutely get your child the mental health support. That doesn't have to include effing up this child's endocrine system and blocking, again, a very natural process. It's not a disease. Puberty is not a disease. Every human being is going to go through it. I mean, you're risking stunting a child's growth, again, messing up their endocrine systems, causing bone density loss, leading to osteoporosis. I mean, no way. No way.
All right, Corinth, would you like to address her position then?
Yeah. So if we're talking about things like informed consent, we generally are allowing children to get some kinds of medical treatments. Even if we grant they don't have informed consent, we generally say, well, parents have stewardship over their children. We trust a combination of the children, their doctors, and their parents to make informed decisions regarding the children's health. I think this is also applicable in mental health cases. We have things like depression medicine, anxiety medicine, all these kinds of mental health treatments that we also say minors are able to get. If we say that both of these are the case, then we're at the point where informed consent by the singular party of a child is not necessary to get medical treatment for them. If that is the case, then this doesn't function as like a defeater for the position. If we're then to say something like the studies are not completely filled, I probably agree. I just do agree we should be doing more studies on this kind of thing. We should be confirming and making sure that all the information we have is good and get better information as time goes on. If we're to say puberty isn't a disease, I agree, but puberty can make symptoms of certain diseases worse. Sometimes we even give puberty blockers to children because puberty is a symptom of the disease that's causing them to go through puberty earlier, and we want them to. In all these cases, we can say, hey, preventing puberty or slowing down puberty is probably a good thing. If we're talking about children, we probably don't want them on puberty blockers for longer than a year, maybe 2. This is generally done by psychiatrists in order to confirm that, hey, by giving this person puberty blockers, we're going to give ourselves a little more time to get a gender dysphoria diagnosis before they get testosterone flowing through their bodies, which is going to make them have much longer lasting skeletal structures that make it harder to pass in the future and generally exacerbate the body dysphoria that comes along with gender dysphoria.
So if you agree, though, that there needs to be more research, more studying, I mean, why should children basically be the lab rats?
Because it's medical treatment for children that we're talking about. If we want to say the medical studies that go for adults, we should just take as applicable onto children as well. Then we just get to, hey, this should be a treatment for them. I think that generally there's probably a little more concern we have about children going through this for some of the reasons you've mentioned, especially relating to like informed consent.
Yeah, I mean, again, get the mental health treatment as far as psychology, psychiatry, and therapy. But any puberty blockers, exogenous hormones for a child is absolutely not okay.
What if
And
those
that's,
psychiatrists, psychologists, and them end up recommending they take those medications?
well, I mean, are we appealing to authority? Because here's an example. I mean, John Money, the infamous sexologist and psychologist, I mean, he recommended the parents raise one of the Reimer twins as Brian as a girl, and they renamed her Brenda. And this person suffered lifelong trauma and ended up unaliving themselves in their 30s due to this. So again, just because a psychologist or a psychiatrist might recommend this, that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all treatment. I mean,
Yeah, I agree. We should continue to do studies to make sure this treatment is good.
yeah, so in the meantime, shouldn't we
No,
not
as long as
do
we have
this
good
to
reason to
children?
do the studies. Based on the studies we have right now affirming this, we have evidence of this working with adults and all these things. We have good reason to, for at least for now, think that this is beneficial, and we should, unless we have good reason to think that this is going to be bad for them later on, we should probably defer to the majority of psychologists who are being very effective. It's something to the degree of like only 1% of children who ever end up going on puberty blockers for gender dysphoria end up desisting being trans at a later point in time and going through like transgender treatments. So it seems like the psychologists and psychiatrists have a very high hit rate on when they recommend this to people. And even in cases where they don't end up recommending it and the children don't end up going on puberty blockers, it's like 85% end up continuing till adulthood. So they do seem to be like a lot more careful. If we find like a psychologist or a psychiatrist being very spurious and just giving it out all the time, I'm probably very much in favor of like revoking their license.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna appeal to the cast review. Are you familiar with the cast review?
Is that the England one?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, this medical authority says one thing, this one says the other thing. But who's right, Corinth?
The
Who's
medical
right?
authority largely recommended we just like put off treatment in terms of getting more evidence. I agree we should continue to get more evidence. If we want to say, well, we should put off treatment for that reason, I think the CAS authority is wrong on that. I've read through it. All the studies they put forward seem to be not supporting what the claims they were making there were last time I checked. Maybe they put out something afterwards.
Well, I mean, let's see the cast review. It's an independent government commission investigation, as we know, and they found that the entire model of gender affirming care for minors was built on a weak, unreliable evidence base. It also concluded that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones have no strong evidence of long-term benefit, and are not simply reversible. and they carry significant risk to bone health, brain development, sexual function, and fertility.
Wasn't the final report recommending that puberty blockers and other medical treatments for minors should generally be offered in clinical trials and should just be much more clear on, hey, this is
Again,
something that we have tons of hard science on? Because I
see,
just
but
agree with this, if I'm remembering correctly.
I haven't seen anything for clinical trials. Again, no clinical trials, no experimentation on children. No way.
But isn't that
Like,
what the CAS report says we should do? We should do clinical trials
I
on
didn't see
children?
that. I didn't see that. If they did, I don't agree with that. I have read it.
Okay, so we both don't agree with the CAS report then. Perfect. We can throw it out.
If it says that, throw it out then.
Okay. CAS report. I'm gonna
I don't
just
I
double
don't
check.
I don't think that children, bottom line, I'll keep restating it. I don't believe that children should receive this kind of intervention. It's just, to me, it's unethical. And again, that's
I'm just wondering, with the reason you said it was unethical, wouldn't this just apply to all medical treatments that could potentially have lasting effects?
No, we're talking about children, minors.
Yeah, obviously for minors I'm talking about, but for all medical treatments for minors, wouldn't the same reasoning just apply to?
No, because when it comes to manipulating a healthy endocrine system when there's nothing wrong with it and blocking a natural part of biology, no. Now,
So
if there's some medical treatment
should
that they
never
need when there's
use,
pathology, then yes. But this, absolutely not. There's nope.
but the reason it was unethical, you said, was the lack of informed consent, right?
One of them, and bottom line, the other one, they're children, for Christ's sake. They're children.
Yeah, but these two reasons you're putting forward just apply to all cases of giving children medical treatment.
You
Like,
can
we're saying
apply
that
it.
that's unethical for that reason. We just say, well, all times treating children with medicine is unethical, in which case we're just at a hard impasse. I think we should give children medicine if they need medicine.
Yeah, medicine to treat a pathology, not exogenous hormones and puberty blockers for
These are
a
forms of
perfectly
medicine.
healthy child.
These are forms of medicine. They're not perfectly healthy. They have mental health issues.
Okay, again, psychology, psychiatry, therapy. We do
Yeah,
not
they end up
need to.
recommending those drugs in terms of treating the mental health issues.
I don't agree with it.
You don't agree they end up recommending
Not
puberty
all.
blockers?
Nope, not all psychologists, not all psychiatrists. Nope,
Obviously not
absolutely
all
not.
psychologists and all psychiatrists have ever recommended puberty blockers. But in
Well,
the
I
cases
agree
that
with the
they
ones
end up
that
getting
don't.
puberty blockers, it's because they were recommended them by psychologists and psychiatrists, right?
Yeah, some do, some don't. I agree with the ones that don't. I agree with the ones that do
Why?
not want to interfere with a healthy endocrine system and a perfectly natural biological process.
Okay, why are the
So
other psychiatrists wrong?
you can agree with those people that want to mess with a child's endocrine system and dysregulate them. That's fine. I say leave the children alone. And I might get a little hype right now. But this is a very sensitive topic. I do not leave the children alone. Leave the children out of this. Parents, get your children psychological help and therapy, and do your absolute best to get them through their puberty, get them through the adolescent stage without interfering with a healthy body. Now, when they're an adult, they can do what they choose to do, but leave the children alone. I'm not budging on that. I don't care how many psychologists think so. I don't care what studies. Throw them
At
out of
this
the
point,
window.
you're just saying, like, well, we refuse to get any more science, either confirming or denying this to be good in the case. And even if we did get the science saying that, I'm just going to throw it out anyway. Like, Obviously, we
I'm
can't
not
end up
budging.
debating this because you're not coming to this position from a position of either reason or science or anything else. So there's no reason to try and use any of these things against your position. If you're just saying like, I don't like this, then okay, you don't like this. It's not really a
I stated
meaningful
why
statement.
I stated why I don't like it. So yeah,
Yeah,
Corinth,
but your reason applies to all giving medicine to any child.
no. This whole like following my logic thing when it comes to children, nope. This is absolutely. I mean, I know we are debating, but to me, this is when it comes to children, it's absolutely not up for debate. So yeah, I would throw away your studies. There, as far as I'm concerned, put them in a big pile, light a match, maybe put a little gasoline on top, and light them up. Because no, you don't mess with children. A healthy child's body,
They're obviously
absolutely
not
not.
healthy. That's why they're going to a psychologist, because
No,
they have an issue.
I'm talking about physically. If they have,
Yeah, we give depressed children antidepressants. That's giving them a physical treatment into their hormone system and endocrine system to treat a mental health disorder. We're not even
Wait.
curing it in that case. We're just treating symptoms of it.
So wait, Abilify, let's see, Lexapro, Wellbutrin, those are just a few psychiatric medications. Last time I checked, those don't stop puberty. That they don't fuck up your endocrine system.
You're saying they fuck it up, but fucking it up is saying
No,
wouldn't just be
I'm
implied
not
here.
saying no.
Because they're
Those
not fucking
medications
up the endocrine system. They're doing what's intended to the endocrine system,
You
just
said
like the
that if they
puberty
take,
blockers are.
you said if they take psychiatric medications, that it does the same thing that messes with their
It
endocrine
alters the
system.
endocrine system. Yes, that's what
Not-
antidepressants do.
Not
They alter it. They do it in a
what?
beneficial way.
Antidepressants work on serotonin and dopamine in the brain. The endocrine system is responsible for their glands that secrete hormones.
Yeah, where does serotonin come from? What do you think?
Like, holy crap.
Where do you think it comes from?
Okay, so let's see. GI tract.
These are parts of the endocrine system. What?
Okay, but I'm saying it's not blocking it. Okay, but it doesn't have like these hardcore impacts.
Yeah, it's doing exactly what it's intending to do and altering the endocrine system in a perceived positive way. That's what the other drug does as well. They're both impacting the endocrine system in ways that the psychologist and psychiatrists think are going to be beneficial to the health of the patient.
It's stopping exogenous hormones and puberty. They're literally stopping puberty. Again, it's not a pathology.
It's not a pathology? What do you mean by pathology?
Puberty is not a pathology.
What do you think? What do you mean by pathology here?
It's not a disease. Puberty is not a disease.
Yeah, no one's saying it's a disease. It's a symptom of some underlying condition, just like depression tends to be. That's why we end like serotonin in the brain or whatever Lexapro does to the brain.
Psychiatric medicines have been way more studied in children than puberty blockers and exogenous hormones.
I'm in favor of continuing. I'm in favor of continuing the studying. You're the one who's saying no.
Well, then
we will not study this.
Okay, no, yeah, not on children. Test it on a damn rat.
We have tested it on rats. We've tested it on adults. We've tested it on humans. Now we're at the point where, okay, to confirm that this is also going to work for children, we need to end up testing it on children as well. You're saying no, I will not. You're not even saying no, I won't let you. You're saying even if you do this thing, even if you do test it on children and it says exactly what you think it says is going to say, Corinth, I'm going to burn it, because even if the science disagrees with me, even if it says, yes, this is helping children and we can empirically prove this 100%, I will not support it. I will burn that study instead. Like there's no point in appealing to studies if you're just not going to accept them. Even if we say it agrees with me, you're just going to say, no, I don't like that study at that point. Why are you appealing to it?
I don't support puberty blockers and exogenous hormones in the name of gender identity for children. That's
Yeah, but
it.
you're
That's
not doing
all,
it for any
Corin.
principled
That's it.
reason. I agreed. If you just say, I don't like this thing, you don't like it, that's fine. But that's not like a reasoned thing to say, or like we shouldn't do it because you don't like it. Because at that point, I just say like, well, I, Corinth, do like it, therefore we should still do it. It's like, okay, we're just saying I like this thing, I don't like this thing.
I think you
Vanilla
do
ice
like
cream
it.
is also good.
I think you do like it.
I do, and I also like vanilla ice cream.
Well, I don't like what you like. How about that? I mean,
Yeah, you like
again,
chocolate ice cream. I like vanilla ice cream.
when it
There's,
comes
like,
to children, I mean, this part, it's not even up for debate. Leave the children alone, Corinth.
I mean, it is up for debate. Like,
Leave
definitionally,
them.
we are debating this
I
topic
get
right
that,
now.
but leave the children out of your trans ideology.
It's not about trans ideology here. It's just about if the science says that this is something that's going to be beneficial for them in terms of treating a mental health disorder, we should generally try and lean on the science.
Is
Medicine
that
is
the
doing
only
the
way
best
to
possible
treat a
treatment.
mental health disorder?
No, it's not the only
in a
way, but in
child?
some cases, it's the best way.
I don't agree.
But you're saying I don't agree, but you're not giving any reason why you don't agree. You're saying
They're
I don't like the
children,
thing, which
Corinth.
again is fine.
That's it. They're children.
Yes, they are. And they're still children, and I'm giving them Lexapro for depression. That's like the reasoning. We say we can't do that either. You appeal to the endocrine system. Lexapro affects the endocrine system. Well, it's just not the specific kind of treatment here that I don't like for other reasons. Like, okay, you don't like it. That's fine. No one's saying you personally have to go out there and like force feed children puberty blockers.
My reasoning is when I originally stated my position.
And it applies directly to giving children Lexapro for depression. And then you just said, well, it's not
again, these don't impact the same way. Okay. Last time
one's impacting serotonin receptors, one impacting other glands. I agree, they're not mechanically the same.
But look at the way that one impacts compared to the other one. That is what I'm saying.
The intention of what we're
like
giving
children cannot consent to sterilizing interventions, Corinth. They're children.
One can consent to certain medical procedures, but not other ones.
Not like this.
So what's the reason they can consent to the other medical procedures?
We're going to go in circles, Corinth. Impacting a child's healthy body? Absolutely not.
The issue is it's to prevent a different unhealthy thing from getting worse.
I mean, I can't even say I understand where you're coming from because I just don't.
So I'm coming from the science and the psychologists and psychiatrists that you say they should go to agree that this is sometimes a good treatment for this given mental health disorder. And all the science ends up agreeing with this is like effective at lowering the worst health outcomes we can get from this, like unaliving rate, self-unaliving rate. That's where I'm coming from with this.
But there's other
I can't understand where you're coming from because you're special pleading that, well, this specific case is bad, despite the fact that I don't apply this reasoning to any other kind of health treatment, including other endocrine altering systems like Lexapro for depression.
Again, that's been well studied for a very, very long time.
And it doesn't interfere. And you're saying, I don't care if it's studied.
Hold on. It doesn't interfere with a natural biological process that every human being goes through.
It does. It's interfering with their endocrine system and the serotonin receptors in their brain.
Again, you're not understanding what I'm saying.
No, I think I'm absolutely understanding what you're saying. The issue is it's just incoherent after that point. Actually, each part of what you're saying. Just when I connect them together, it just like falls apart.
And you can say special use all of these, words you want to use, right? But again,
do you want me to define what special pleading is?
My position is not going to change. Not one iota when it comes to children. Nope.
Okay.
So host, we can conclude that right there because that's just, I'm not budging.
Okay.
Again, take the studies, light a match, burn them.
You know what other group ended up burning books and studies relating to trans healthcare? I think it was a certain German political party from, say, 1933 to 1945.
Okay, again, you can compare this.
It's funny how both of your reasonings for these things
you
align
can
with Jim
compare
Crow
this
laws
to Schmittler.
and
That's
both-
fine.
and a certain German political party.
No, you've look
it's a
look
bit
at the
ironic.
things you have to bring in to like support your argument. It's
You
ridiculous.
brought in
You brought in
John
race.
Donnie, dog. What do you want me to do?
You brought in race, and then you brought in. Now you're bringing
Yes,
in.
I'm bringing the exact
Schmittler.
reasoning
It's
you're putting forward.
ridiculous. These are absurd. Stop
The exact
it.
reasoning you put forward supports these other ideologies. If you're like, you know what, it's fine. I like these other ideologies too. Like, at least you're consistent. But in this case, you're just like, you're a patsy. You're just a
Again,
patsy.
call it what you will, Corinth, but
I will continue
you support using children as lab rats for the trans ideology. It's ridiculous.
I support using children in medical research for treatments relating to children. Yes.
That's just a fancy way of saying lab rats, just so you guys know.
So saying if
Corinth is just
after
trying
we
to dress
give
it
like
up.
testing on adults and after we do testing on animals to give proof of concept for treatments, that's also going to be applicable to children. We also test on children to make sure there's no like excess treatment issues. Like if that's saying lab rats to you, like, okay.
Yep.
All right, it's kind of going in circles. I do have a clarifying question for you, Corinth. So, what you're saying is you're okay with it as long as it's needed to see if it is beneficial, is what your sense is?
No, what I'm saying is we also need to do more studies relating to these things because the science on this isn't as exhaustive on specifically children as it is for adults. So we do need to be very wary and be a lot more clear with people who are going to be doing children. This is a less studied subfield of this treatment. But the studies that we do have and the information we do have does point to it being beneficial at this point. So if some later study ends up showing no, that actually isn't beneficial for these reasons, we should be able to adapt and say, okay, we should stop doing this treatment. But until that point comes out, we need to expand the amount of research we have on this field and do what's best in what the best known treatment in medicine we have at this point.
So yeah, continue doing it until we know for sure, basically.
Yeah, either we know it's like bad or we have better reason to think it's bad for these children, that it's helpful, or until we know it's like a good thing.
All right. And then Liberated, your stance on this, I'm sorry, I hope you don't take this as ganging up. I'm just trying to get clarity on it. Why are you saying it's bad other than that they're kids? And it's like ick, right? I don't like it because I don't like it. I didn't catch your grounding. So did you have an argument of why it's bad? Because you said that it was that study, and then you said you're not going to use that study. So
no,
a clear reason of why.
It's gonna go back to my original statement. I mean, some of these treatments carry significant irreversible harms. And children cannot consent to sterilizing interventions. Full stop. And they're not cognitively and emotionally able to give this consent. I mean, again, I get sensitive when it comes to children. They don't have the cognitive abilities to weigh the risks and benefits of something that can affect them for the rest of their lives. I mean, we don't let children get tattoos, do we? We don't let a 14-year-old have sex with a 30-year-old, right? Why is that?
Corinth, you want to re-engage or move on?
I'm happy to engage because neither of those things are deemed medically necessary by medical boards and through science. We end up saying that, hey, children can consent to things that have a potential side effect of being sterilizing all the time through various forms of medical treatments that have a potential side effect. The puberty blockers in and of themselves are, for the time period that they get prescribed to children for this, don't end up having a meaningful chance to sterilize the child over most other drugs that have that as like a potential side effect.
Okay, even a potential side effect for a child is ridiculous. No.
Can we give children chemotherapy if they have cancer?
Yeah.
What if that has a potential to sterilize them? Can we still do it?
They have cancer, Corinth.
So is that
They
a
have
yes
a
or a no? We
pathology.
can give
They
them
have
a
a
treatment.
pathology.
So we can give them a treatment that can potentially have the outcome that you say they can't consent to. Okay, like,
Yeah, they have cancer.
and they have
Again,
gender
cancer has
dysphoria.
been way more researched in children than
And you don't care about the research. You've
these
said that
gender
repeatedly. Why are
affirming.
you appealing to it?
You guys, how many times do I have to state that they don't have the cognitive ability?
That's why I brought up
when
cancer.
it,
See
when
if
it
you cared
comes
about the
to
cognitive ability. You said, no, I don't care about the cognitive ability. I care about treating the disease. Well, that disease has more like studied. But also, even if you did study this to that degree, just throw it out. I don't care if it's studied or not.
again, we're talking about interfering with a healthy body.
Like,
If
this
a
is just a
child has
Gordian knot I
cancer,
don't have a sharp enough
Corinth,
knife to cut through.
are they healthy, Corinth, if they have cancer?
No, and if they have gender
Okay,
dysphoria, are they
then.
healthy, liberated woman? Are they healthy if they have gender dysphoria?
Mentally, psychologically, no, they're not healthy. But
So they're not
again,
healthy.
there are
Okay.
interventions.
Thank you.
There are interventions that they can undergo without any medications, without any puberty blockers, exogenous hormones.
So what if I wanted to just like rub the amethyst crystal on like the child's tumor? Because that's like a different thing that they can go through to deal with the tumor. And that doesn't have the risk of sterilizing them. Do we say like, well, the studies don't actually show this to be as effective of a treatment method as say chemotherapy. So though chemotherapy has a bigger risk to it, we should still defer to chemotherapy?
Corinth, I get what you're saying. It's not that I'm not understanding it, okay? It's just that again, you do this thing where you like want to like compare apples to oranges. Like we've seen it
I
throughout
compare
this
medical
whole hold
treatment
on.
to medical
Let me
treatment.
finish.
Yes.
Let me finish. We have seen it throughout this whole debate. You brought race into it. You brought Adolf Schmittler. I mean,
I compared the reasoning you provided
now you're
to
talking about
some other
rubbing
policy
amethyst
and
on
see if
on
the
a
reasoning
tumor.
Yes, I'm providing the reasoning you're providing against some other case
Yeah, no, that's
to see if
fine.
you actually value the reasoning. This is called a reductio ad absurdum.
Yeah, no, I know I know exactly what you're doing, Corinth. I'm not.
And I don't know why you're bringing it up as if it's like something crazy, so out there, like you're doing.
Because I
one of the
think
most
you know
common
what?
methods
Guess
of
what?
argumentation.
Guess what? When a child is born male and has an incongruency, I think it's absolutely insane that you support this child transitioning to a girl. I'm gonna say girl because that's an adolescent human female. That reasoning is so unnatural. It's so ridiculous. Again, adults, do what you want to do. Medically mutilate your bodies, invert your penises, call it a vagina, whatever. But now this again, this ideology is just so incredibly harmful. And now it's trickling down to the children. And then we have people like you that essentially just don't care.
You know what I think is insane? The Beyond section of Bed Bath & Beyond. Like, they don't have anything beyond what's like normally available at mid-market stores.
Cool.
Like, that ideology of capitalism is kind of crazy. Like, it's just not a meaningful critique of the position. It's just saying, like, I don't like this, which, like, we know you don't like this. That's fine. No one is saying you have to like this. The issue is, do we have any good reason to follow what you're saying? And if you can't provide a good reason to follow what you're saying, then I don't know why we should take it into any more consideration than you just saying, I don't like the thing.
I've already stated why. So again, host, we can keep going in circles all damn day. My position is not going to change. And guess what? Burn the studies, light them up.
Burn the studies. You haven't studied this enough as the other things.
No, I'm saying whatever your studies, Corinth, again, take a match, put a little gas, a little splash of gas, burn them. And Corinth, last statement on this, leave children alone.
You know what I think? I think you should leave children alone too. We should just leave it up to them, their parents, and their doctors. That's what I think we should do. We should leave it like
I mean,
politics out of
anything,
this. This
any
should be
way
like a doctor, parents,
I
and the
think
children themselves should go about
any
what they should
way
do.
that you, here's the thing that I have found throughout every trans ideology debate. You know what these boil down to, everybody? It all boils down to what crack, crevice, medical anomaly, um, reductio absurdum can I find to support something that is so unnatural? Men can be women, women can be men, children can they can't consent, but you know what? Fuck it. Who cares? All in the name to support trans ideology.
Was it
That's
like
what you
Acme?
guys do. You guys find every little crack, little crevice to like support this fucked up ideology.
So like, is that an Acme one?
What was that?
Is it Acme, the brand of the soapbox you just stood on to yell out into the void how much we're all insane and how you
Yep.
want to burn all the studies and how
Yep.
everyone else is evil?
Yep.
Okay.
Take it how you
Because
will.
that was
Corinth. I don't
really that was a
care.
really good brand of soapbox. I might get me one of those.
You should.
All right, guys. Let's do our closing. Over everything so far. Let's do our closings. I'll give you each like 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Do you want to go
Go
first?
ahead,
Or do you want
Corinth.
me to
I
go
stepped
first?
off my soapbox, so go ahead.
Okay.
I'll let
Well,
Corinth go first.
I don't have my soap. I just ordered it. It says it's gonna take like later in the day. Prime shipping sucks. Like it's taking so long for me to get
Well,
that, so
upgrade
mine's gonna
it.
be quicker.
Don't be so cheap. Go ahead.
I did. I got it same day, but I thought I had like the next 3 minutes to get it. So like my bad. Mine will be quicker for that reason.
All right,
Yeah,
Delulu,
they're
go ahead.
like she just doesn't like the
Let's let
reasoning
him
she
make
provides.
let's let him make his close here.
She doesn't like the reasoning she provided for like the policies she likes when it comes to like any other case. For most people, that would be like enough to say, okay, maybe the reasoning I have is like bad reasoning. I should rethink this. I should see, does my position actually a good one, or was I wrong? And then, but for her, it's just like, no, this is not for debate. Like I get really mad at my own political side for saying like debating trans healthcare is not up for debate. It's not a debate when it's like one of the hottest political issues of our time, and yet she's doing the same thing. It's like, okay, we're at horseshoe theory, but for just like rejecting argumentation, we found the turf end of it. That's all.
Is it my
All right.
turn? Hold on. I gotta step.
It is your close, and you can take your full 3 or 4 minutes if you want.
Yeah. I just want to step back on my soapbox really quick. Hold on. Okay, I'm back on, people. Okay, so throughout this debate, one truth has become unmistakably clear. What is being promoted as gender identity, it's not a coherent or measurable reality. It's a collection of stereotypes, intuitions, and subjective feelings, elevated to the level of medical doctrine. This ideology insists that a child's fleeting sense of an internal feeling no one can define or measure should override biology, override safeguarding, and override lifelong consequences. And in this process of trans ideology, women have been reduced to abstractions, not a sex class with material realities, but a costume, a mood, a personality type. Womanhood has been stripped of its humanity and reinterpreted through the lens of gendered cliches that feminists have fought against for generations. Affirmation has become the highest moral command. Even when it demands we deny biology, silence women's boundaries, and medicalize vulnerable children without proper evidence. Affirmation is not compassion when it requires us to abandon truth, science, and safeguarding. So my position's very simple. Every person deserves dignity, but no ideology deserves obedience. Hold on, let me step off my soapbox.
right. We'll leave it at that, guys. Corinth, Liberated, I really appreciate the back and forth from you guys and letting me be a platform for you to do it and let me figure it out while I'm doing with this new streaming software that I haven't used it for. I think it was a pretty interesting debate and I enjoyed my time with you guys. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, host. And actually, I liked Corinth before the children debate, so now I don't like him.
I don't dislike you, Liberated Woman. I still like you. That was fun.